What if the hardest trial you could ever face was one you couldn't tell a single soul about? Today, we're diving into that very idea from Soren Kierkegaard's incredible work, Fear and Trembling. This is a journey into the solitary silence of faith. So let's just start with the big question Kierkegaard puts right in front of us. What's really harder? Is it a kind of suffering you can cry about that everyone can see and wrap their heads around? Or is it a trial you have to face in total crushing silence, completely unable to explain it to anyone? To get to the bottom of this, Kierkegaard gives us two incredible figures to compare. On one side, you've got the tragic hero, whose pain is public, it's comprehensible. On the other side, you have the knight of faith, whose struggle is intensely private and, well, it's a paradox. These two aren't just characters, they represent two totally different ways of facing a crisis. And that distinction, that's everything. Okay, first up, let's break down the figure we can all kind of relate to, the tragic hero. Their pain, no matter how huge, at least makes sense to us. A perfect example is someone like Agamemnon from Greek mythology. He had to make the horrifying choice to sacrifice his own daughter for the good of his nation. Now, that's an unimaginable act. But, and this is the key, he can explain it. His community gets the stakes. They can understand his agony, because he's doing it for a cause they all recognize as important. And the reason he can explain it is because he's operating inside what Kierkegaard calls the universal. Think of the universal as the shared rulebook for society. It's our common ethics, our laws, our language. It's the whole framework that lets us make sense of what other people are doing and why. It's our shared reality. So the hero's pain gets articulated, it comes out. For Kierkegaard, crying and lamenting, that's a translation of their inner turmoil into a language that everyone gets. This means that even in his deepest, darkest sorrow, he's still grounded in his community. He gets empathy, he gets validation, he is never, ever truly alone. All right, now let's flip the coin and look at our second figure, the knight of faith. This is where the path gets way, way harder and a whole lot quieter. The classic example here, of course, is Abraham. He's commanded by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. But unlike Agamemnon, Abraham has no greater good he can point to. I mean, how could he possibly explain this to his wife Sarah or to Isaac? He can't. The command comes from way outside the universal, and it defies every bit of human logic. And this is the absolute core of the knight's problem, the paradox. It's that moment when a private command from the absolute, from God, directly and completely contradicts the universal ethical law. How can you possibly explain that you have to do something that looks monstrous just because of a personal command you received? The truth is, you can't. The second you try to justify it with logic, it stops being faith. The fallout from this paradox is just immense. The knight's silence isn't some noble choice, it's a brutal necessity. It opens up an isolating abyss that completely severs him from the rest of the human family. He's in a state of absolute isolation, carrying a secret that is literally impossible to share. He's walking around in the world, but he's spiritually invisible. This table really just lays it all out, side by side. The hero expresses his pain through crying, which is a translation. The knight endures silence, which is just pure isolation. The hero's motivated by the universal good, which keeps him at home in his community. The knight's motivated by an absolute command, which makes him a total outsider. And here's the kicker. One gets empathy, while the other risks being seen as nothing more than a monster. But it gets even deeper than that. For Kierkegaard, this silence isn't just a passive condition. Oh no, it is an active, constant, and brutal struggle. The real test for the knight of faith is this ongoing battle against the overwhelming, fundamental human need to just speak and be understood. Can you imagine the weight of that? The constant temptation to just try and explain, to get even a tiny crumb of comfort or validation from another person. And these are the escape routes he has to constantly reject. There's the temptation to justify his action, to try and fit the divine into a human-sized box. There's the temptation to find a mediator, anyone to share the burden with. Or he could just retreat, bail on the paradox entirely, and run back to the safety of the ethical world. Resisting all of that, that's the real trial. So the knight has to give up the catharsis of being understood. You know that feeling of relief, of connection, that shared humanity you get when you finally tell someone what you're going through? That thing that sustains us in our worst moments? Yeah, that's completely off the table for him. That is the unbelievable psychological price of his faith. So why? Why does Kierkegaard put so much weight on this? Well, in his view, this silent struggle isn't just pain for pain's sake. It actually represents a higher, more profound stage of existence. Let's look at what each of them is standing on. The tragic hero, he relies on the word. That's language, law, shared ethics. It's all communal property. But the knight of faith, he is relying only on a breath of spirit, a direct, unmediated connection to the absolute that is entirely and terrifyingly personal. And this brings us to Kierkegaard's absolutely stunning conclusion. The tragic hero is great, truly admirable. He represents the highest potential of our shared ethical world. But the knight of faith is greater. He's greater because he steps beyond that world. He manages to survive in the vacuum where shared human understanding simply ends. This quote just perfectly captures it. Silence is the border, the boundary you cross to get to faith. And to endure that silence is the ultimate sacrifice. You're not sacrificing your life, you're sacrificing your very sense of belonging to the human race, to the world of shared meaning. And so, we're left with this really provocative question. Is Kierkegaard suggesting that the most profound spiritual journeys, the highest tests of faith, are by their very nature solitary? Is it a path that, in the end, we all have to walk in silence and completely alone? It's a thought that is as unsettling as it is profound. Thanks for joining this explainer.